Welcome to Kitchen Table Creativity. I'm Donna Leffler, and today I have this adorable, cozy beach cottage that we're going to paint together. It's fun, it's whimsical, and I just absolutely adore this color palette that we've been using. This is the fourth summer painting in a series of 6. So if you've been following me along, I've been using pretty much the same supplies every week, and they're all these colorful, beachy, summery images. And it's using the same 5 colors. And the reason why I'm doing only 5 colors is because I just want to keep it simple. I want to keep it doable. And there's something about repeating the same colors that helps you really fine tune your art, I think. And so if you're following along with me and you're painting all 6, maybe you'll want to frame them, maybe you'll want to make cards out of them, maybe you'll just want to keep them on your desk. But whatever you do with your finished work, I hope that this color palette just brings joy into your life. So I'm going to run really quick through my supplies. If you have been following me in the last 3 tutorials, or even 1 or 2 of them, they're the same supplies, so you can skip ahead to the painting part if you like in this video. But for people who are maybe seeing this for the first time, I'm going to run through the supplies. So left to right, first of all, I have a scrap of watercolor paper, and it's the same type of paper that I'm working on. And so I like to test my colors a lot of times after mixing them, especially. I'm going to be mixing paint to create the sand color from the yellow and the coral together. And so I like to test it before I put it on my finished or on my project that's in the works. Then I have a piece of paper towel. I use that to blot the water off my brush. And you can use a rag. You can use anything that is absorbent to blot the paint off your brush and the water. Then I have for finishing work, I have some pens. I always use the Micron pens, 005 and a 05, and that's for adding fine detail work when I'm done with the painting. I have a white Sharpie marker, size medium, and I might use that. I probably will, just to add a few little details again in white. Excuse me. And then I have a stylus, and the stylus I use to trace my image. And so I'm going to show you real quick how I do that. I have a printable. If you see the description, there's a drop down that if you click on more, it will open up and it will have a link to a Google Share Drive. And you can click on that, it will open a PDF and you can print this out. And so what I do is I take the stylus and I have a piece of graphite paper, the waxless variety because it can be erased, put the dark side down, put this over it, and I really just hold it. I don't even bother taping it down. I just hold it in place. And then I just trace around all of the outlines. Now these printables are a little bit more simplistic than the actual painting that I'm going to do. And so I always say you can add the details on your own. You don't have to trace every single thing that's in here. And sometimes when I create these, they turn out a little bit different than the painting. Like the horizontal lines on the cottage, they came out a little bit different. And so you can always take just a regular lead pencil and fill in or add to or even erase anything that comes out a little bit different if you don't like the way it looks. Okay, then I have a spray bottle, which I use to spray my paints and get them a little bit wet, just prepare them for use. The color palette that I'm using, like I said, is the summer color palette. And that comes from my full palette, which is called Heart and Home. I created this on my own. And it has really all the colors that you would need to paint almost anything. But I've decided that each season I'm going to create a new palette of 5. And so for summer, I've created this one, which has the yellow, the reddish coral, the aqua, which I love this aqua blue color, a sap green, and then a violet. And so we're really just using these 5 colors. Now, these are Daniel Smith professional watercolor paints. You don't have to run out and buy those if you don't want to. The way that I use them is I buy the tubes and then I create a tin and I just put the paints in here. And I have a tutorial for that, which I'm working on. I will be posting that soon. And then I let them dry and I just use them as like I would regular pan paints. And that works really well. Okay, so the watercolor paper I'm using, I have a description in the description of what this watercolor paper is. I get it on Amazon. It's a pretty good high quality one. I cut it into 8 by 8 because I have frames that I'm framing this collection of 6 summer paintings. And so I have a trimmer and I just cut it into 8 inches by 8 inches square. And if you want to do that, you can either make it smaller or you can do the same size, or you can even try to enlarge or make smaller the actual PDF that you're going to trace. Now if you don't want to trace also, I forgot to mention, you don't have to trace this. You could hand draw it. It's pretty simple, mostly square and rectangular shapes, some round circles, some hearts, and you probably could hand draw this because it's more of a doodle image. Okay, so the 2 brushes I'm going to use are both round tip, and they are size 4 and a size 2. You can use whatever brushes you have on hand, but I have one a little bit bigger for kind of background work and the other for fine detail work. I have my ceramic palette here for mixing, which I absolutely love. I got this one off Etsy, and I think it was handmade. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it has my studio name on it. Then I have 3 jars of water over here. I always like to use 3 jars so that I can get my brushes really clean. So you rinse the very dirty brush in the first one, and then the second one again, and then by the third one, it's really clean, especially if you're switching in between paint colors. All right, so to start out with, I'm going to remove this. And I have my image all traced here, and I'm going to start with a yellow because I always like to start with the lightest colors. And I didn't spray my paints ahead of time, so I'm doing that right now. Let that sit for just a second. And I'm going to start with a smaller brush because there isn't a lot of areas on this painting that need really yellow. There's actually more sandy yellow, which I'm going to mix in a minute. And I've been doing the same thing, like I said, I'm doing the same thing for all 6 of these different images, these different projects, and they're all summery and fun. So I'm going to use this pretty much full strength. I'm not going to water it down too much because I want it to be, first of all, the sun, and I want the sun to be pretty bright, but I've been doing this in each one of them. It has the same sun. Just so fun. I love these beautiful paintings. And I've been adding just a touch of orange to it, just to kind of give it a little more interest than having it just a flat yellow color. So I'm using my smaller brush, painting the rays, and I will be outlining most of my work with the black markers, black pens to add detail. And I just found it's called watercolor sketching. It's a very forgiving way, especially for beginners, to really make their work kind of pop, and it also is easy to camouflage any errors that might have happened. Now, when I was tracing this one, I noticed that a lot of my lines were not perfectly straight. And I just want to say that you really don't have to worry about your lines being perfectly straight, because these projects, pretty much all the images that I create, they're kind of, they're supposed to be just hand-done, whimsical. I call it Scandinavian folk art. And so it's supposed to be fun and whimsical. It's not supposed to be realistic. If you want realistic painting that looks just like something really totally real, at this point in my artistic journey, that's really not my style. But I'm sure if it is your style, you can find all kinds of stuff on YouTube especially. But I found when I was first starting, and I've done a lot of art throughout the years, but when I was first starting with watercolor, I couldn't really find anything that was really simple. And I just wanted like the most simple thing, just to start to play with the paints and get used to using them. And I'd find an artist who maybe had 1 or 2 tutorials like that, and then they would go into this realism with a lot of shadow and a lot of layering, and I really felt intimidated by that. So I didn't even paint for a while. And then I started thinking, if there's a way, I'm just going to do this on my own. And so that's what I did. Pretty much figured out how to do it on my own. And it's been just so much fun. All right, so what I'm doing now, I'm just getting a little bit of this coral on my palette, the red coral, and I'm going to rinse my brush of that again really well. And I'm going to go back into the yellow, especially when you're transferring from a darker to a lighter color, you have to be kind of careful. And now I got a little paint on or a little water, on my paper, so I'm fixing that. All right, so I'm going to get a lot more yellow here. And first I want to make just like an orangey color. So I'm going to put yellow, and then I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of this, and just, as you can see, is just a tiny bit, really goes a long way. And now I have this still pretty yellow, so I'm going to add a little more of this coral, and that's a little bit more orangey, which is what I want. So like I said, I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to add a little bit of this to the sun, just to the center part of the sun. And I'm also going to put it into these flower centers. And this is just overlapping the yellow or layering the yellow with the orange. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to water this way, way down. And I'm going to see what I get with that. Okay, I like this, I think, for the sand. And this just reminds me of an adorable beach cottage where you could walk right out to the ocean or the lake. And maybe there's sand and there's just these little stepping stones that you would get out to the beach. So this is the sand that I'm painting right now. And I'm still using my small brush. Now you could switch to your larger if you want, but to paint around these little areas, I find like the stones and the grassy. And if you paint over that a little bit, not a big deal because we are going to be adding darker colors to those. And I'm just going to carry this a little bit out. And I like to add just plain water at the bottom and just kind of blend it so it disappears into nowhere land. And it actually kind of makes it look a little bit nicer if it has some texture with some little bit of white showing through. And then you could take a little bit of darker and add a little bit of dark around where the plants are, where the house is. And that adds just a tiny bit of shadow. All right, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this same color that I have, and I'm going to rinse my brush really well because I'm switching colors again. And I'm going to take a little bit of this dark lavender, or it's not even lavender, it's violet. It's a dark purple. And I need just a tiny, tiny bit of this. And I'm mixing now a brown. And I want the brown for the wood on the cottage and the stepping stones. So since I have my small brush still, I'm going to start with the little stones. And this is quite watered down, so I'm going to just start with this kind of wash just to give the stones a little color. And I'm also going to water it down even more. This is how you can get lighter colors without adding any other paint to it. Just add water. And I'm going to start to do the trim on the cottage. Now this is a little bit more detail work, but the reason why I'm doing this now is because I already have these paints, these colors on my palette, and I could leave them and come back and do this after, but then I'd have to wet it again, and because the paint would probably be dry by then. So that's why I'm doing. There's always a reason, almost always a reason for the different way that I do things, and a lot of that is just trial and error, learning over time, and maybe creating a color and then realizing I don't have enough of it mixed, and it's kind of hard sometimes to create the same color again. So it's good to try to make sure that you mix enough of the paint that you're using. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back and add another layer to these stones to make them a little bit darker. And this is how, just by doing layers, you can darken up with the same watered down paint. Now, the areas of the cottage that are white, like the trim around the door, the cutout around the heart, this eave, I'm going to just leave those. I'm not going to paint them white. And once I get the blue on the cottage, it's going to look more white. All right, so now I'm just kind of checking, see if there's anything that I want to change with this. And I think maybe making these stones just a tad bit darker. And I want the trim on the house to stay a little bit lighter, so I'm just going to leave that. Okay, and so next I will move on to the coral. Okay, so I have a little bit of coral on my palette already, but I'm going to add a little more. And this is actually almost dried out. Don't need a lot of this color because it's very vivid. The Daniel Smith watercolor paints in general are very pigmented because they're professional quality. Whatever paints you're using, I'm sure, are fine. You don't have to get the Daniel Smith paints. Okay, so I am going to stay with my small brush here, and I'm just going to start with the smaller detail work. So one of the things that I really like to do when I'm painting is I like to think about the subject that I'm painting and why did I choose this one? Well, first of all, pretty much everything that I paint, I choose because it just makes me happy. And then I start to think about why does it make me happy? And almost always it's because there's some story behind it. And then, you know, I think that's kind of good therapy when you're painting, to just reminisce about good times that you've had, things that make you happy. Last week I painted a garden gate, and that should be on YouTube now, so you can look that up, a whimsical garden gate. And I realized it was like I think it was the book The Secret Garden that I read many years ago, probably when I was a child. And something about that book just made me think, oh, I wish I had a secret garden. I think that's what it was. Sometimes you can't remember clearly these memories, but... And I always thought it would be so cool to have like a little secret garden, like little areas in your garden where you could go and just sit and meditate or pray, or, you know, have your coffee or your tea, maybe iced tea in the summer, and just really enjoy the space, the flowers. And that just reminded me of that. And so this one, this little cottage, really reminds me of my family growing up. My mom and dad bought a little cottage on the lake in Michigan. And I really, you know, as an adult now, and this was many years ago, my parents have since passed, but I really think that that was like a dream come true for them to have this little place. It was like a very rustic little cottage. It had like a well that you had to pump to get water even in. It did have plumbing. And I remember going there several summers and just really hanging out, enjoying it, baking in the little kitchen. And I loved to cook when I was young. And so this little cottage, kind of reminds me of those days and how it was just so much fun and so carefree. And I think that's the great thing about painting, especially with the watercolor, because you kind of have to let the water do its thing. So you can't be too worried about it going outside the lines or it being perfect. And I have two more little hearts here. I think I'm going to make this one purple and this one purple. So I think I'm just going to go with the center coral here. And I think I love hearts, and I always think like the hearts bring the love into whatever you're painting. So that's one of the signature things. Almost everything I paint has a heart in it somewhere. And that kind of just evolved over time of painting and realizing how much I like hearts. They just seem quite meaningful to me. The heart is, it's like the center of love of every home, or it should be at least. And I'm just darkening up with another layer of this because I want these colors to really be vivid. The flowers, the hearts. And for the door, I'm actually going to make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, I'm going to water this down just actually quite a bit. And it's funny, when you water this color down, it almost looks pink. So I'm going to use that. And what's so great about painting this way is that I don't have to worry that this pink is going to clash with the red. And sometimes they can, because if your pink is more cool or more warm, more orangey or more blue, a cool color would be blue, then it might kind of clash. But when you're using the same 5 colors and you're just watering them down, then you know they're going to match. And it just makes it so much easier than having to go to your palette and decide on another color. And that's part of why I like to use 5. And now if I wanted to make this darker, of course, I could just go ahead and I could add another layer. But I'm going to keep it kind of pink. And then I'm going to take the darker color again. A little more. And I'm going to blot any extra first off my brush. And I'm going to test this first. Yep. And I'm going to paint a little bit darker these two, so I want this to kind of look like wood grain, painted wood. And then I might or might not go over this with the black pen, but I kind of like the way that looks now. Okay, so I believe I have all the areas of coral that I want now. And I'm going to use just a little bit of excess I have on this brush to fill these in a little bit more. And like I keep saying, I'm going to add the detail with the pen, so it's going to change the whole look at the end. Sometimes after you paint, what you painted looks a little bit different than dry than wet, and so it's always good to kind of wait a minute, take a step back and see, okay, I like the way this looks. Now I'm going to move on to the that beautiful turquoise blue color. Okay, so I rinsed my small brush really well, and I'm going to set that aside for a minute, and I'm going to move to my bigger brush, which is the size 4 for this, because there's quite a bit of the house that I'm going to paint this color. And before you set a brush aside, make sure to rinse it. I know I say that a lot, but it's important. And to start out with, I am going to make it a little bit more watered down. Not really super watered down, but a little bit more thin for the first layer. And I'm going to just see how this goes. If this brush feels too big, I might switch, but I don't think it will. The great thing about round tip brushes is like this heart area. I just want to go ever so slightly around there. And the tip of this brush is very, very fine. So I can outline this heart, and then I don't have to worry about getting hard on the white, or I mean blue on the white part of the heart. So even if you just have one round tip brush, a lot of times you can use it for, especially if you like to paint small projects like what I'm working on. I paint a lot of small projects, and mostly small projects, because I don't really like to work on something that's going to take me days to finish. Pretty much, I think every tutorial that I have so far that I have posted on YouTube is an hour or less. Most of them are around a half hour. But for the summer projects, I have a few of them that are a little more detailed. Like this is one of them. Probably going to take an hour by the time I'm done. And I did a sandcastle. That one took a little bit longer. I don't think it took quite an hour. And I did some popsicles. Those were a little bit less time. They were more simple. And the garden gate took, I think, the longest so far. And that was just under an hour. But like I said, at the beginning, I always talk about my supplies and the tracing process. So if you already know that and you follow my videos, you can just skip past that if you want. So if you are following me, you like the tutorials, please subscribe to my channel. That would be so great, a great support for me. I'm relatively new to YouTube and just growing my channel. And I think if you subscribe, YouTube will let you know when I have new stuff that comes out. And I post new tutorials almost every single week. That's my goal. I have a Creative Heart journal that I create. And the Creative Heart journal, my paint is coming out of there. The Creative Heart journal, it's a little publication that I create, and every week it's a little bit different. It's seasonal. I love the seasons, and I love to focus on the different seasons. So right now we're into summer here where I live in Idaho, and I've been focusing on summery type projects. And then in the fall, I'll be focusing on fall projects and holiday around Christmas. And I just really have a lot of fun doing that. So the Creative Heart Journal is seasonal. It comes out every Friday at noon Mountain Time. And I email it. It's a digital mini magazine flip book. And I make this totally from my heart. It's free. Has little stories, has a link to my blog. And in there, I also will talk about when I have new things coming out. I just started doing an online free workshop, watercolor paint along with me, and I plan on doing that once a month. And it's Wednesday, and it's trash day, so you might hear the trash truck right now, right outside my window. It's funny because last week I had a delivery and they rang the doorbell, and you could hear it really well in the video, which I didn't think my microphone would pick it up, but it did. And I sort of just didn't really think about it. I just overlooked it. And then my grandkids were watching my video, and when the doorbell rang, they said, "What was that?" And they started cracking up laughing because they just thought it was hilarious that the doorbell would ring in the middle of my video. So pardon the noises, but that's part of creating in your home environment. And I was just thinking about it this morning, how great it is really that we have this opportunity to create stuff now. Like the internet is really a miracle to me. It's amazing that we can reach people all over the world. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit of lighter and darker here where there might be some shadows. And again, I don't try to make it super realistic. But if the sun was shining, the eaves here would probably create a shadow. And this side of the house would be probably a little bit darker. Just sort of blending a little bit. And this is, it's good if it looks a little bit uneven because it's supposed to look like painted wood, like I said. All right, so now I'm going to take this. Let's see. And do kind of the same thing I did to the door. Have these darker lines with blue. And I'm just kind of very lightly touching the tip. Really not even adding any paint to my brush hardly, very little. Okay, I like the way that looks. All right, taking a step back, and I like the way this looks, so I'm going to leave it. And next, I'm going to move on to the dark violet. Okay, so I already have a little bit of violet, but it looks like it got mixed with a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to add some new violet. And this one is super pigmented, so watering it way down. And I also switched back to my smaller brush. And that is because the things that I'm going to be painting now are all pretty small. I'm going to start with this flower. And I find when I paint these small, intricate type areas, a lot of times I have too much water or too much paint on my brush, so I just blot, and that helps. It's better to start out lighter. Once you add too much paint, it's a little bit harder to remove. And you can always go over it like I keep showing. So if you've used the traceable, I said this at the beginning, but I did draw in some extra lines because sometimes when I create those, the lines don't all come through for some reason. Or maybe they're just very light and they don't print, I don't know. But when that happens, I just hand draw in. Okay. So all of the things that I talk about, the free class, the Creative Heart Journal, those links are all in the description. And if you don't see it, there should be a little thing that says more. And if you click on more, where the description is, it'll open up a whole bunch of information that I have in there. I put the supply list, just for reference. Like I say, you don't have to buy all this stuff, but people want to know, like, what exactly did you use or what's the name of that? So I put that in. and links to the free class. I do that once a month now, and links to the Creative Heart Journal sign up. And if you sign up to get that, I will email it to you every Friday. I don't do a lot of other emailing, but I will let you know when I have the free classes. And you also will get a Whimsical bird trio tutorial that I created. And it's just for fun. It's really fun. It's really cute. It's 3 little round birds, really, really easy to paint. It's something you could even do with children if you have grandkids or you have kids. It's a really fun little project. So I give you extensive information on that, including how to trace. So you will get that emailed to you right away. And depending on when you sign up for the journal, I only email it once a week. So if you sign up on like Monday, you won't get it till Friday. It's been very smoky here where I live. There's fires in Oregon, and we're getting a lot of smoke coming in. And I feel like I'm losing my voice a little bit. So pardon my throat clearing here. Okay, and then for the middle of this, I'm going to add this very dark for the inside of the pot. All right. And I think that does it for the purple. I always kind of take a step back and just see, is there anything I want to add or touch up before I rinse my brush and go on. And I am going to outline this with a black pen, so it'll be a little more defined. Okay, now we have the green, and then we're almost done. Okay, so now with the green, I'm using my small brush again. And I'm going to start with a little bit lighter green. So I'm just going to water it down. Actually, I have some yellow here. I think I'm going to add this green to this yellow and make it just a little bit lighter to start out with. You don't necessarily have to do it this way, but I thought as long as I have the yellow, I might as well. The last project I used just pure yellow for the leaves to start out with, and you could do that too if that appeals to you. So yeah, there's fires here in Oregon, I think, and they're creating all this smoke. I think there's like 10 different fires going on, or maybe even more by now. It's really horrible. And I guess every year now this is happening. And the smoke blows like straight in to where I live, the western part of Idaho. So not really going outside very much right now because the air quality is really bad. So again, I'm really thankful for having my painting. Definitely, I could paint all day, every day. I don't, but I could if I had the time. So the free class that I do, I am planning on doing that once a month. And right now we're painting a whimsical bird with flowers. It's a fun project. Very simple. So I allow an hour and a half, but the project really only takes about an hour. So if you'd like to join me for that, just look in the description. There's links. And if you sign up for the journal, you'll get notified, and you're welcome to join me. I would love to meet you online. It's all on Zoom, so you don't have to go anywhere. Just I send you a supply list. You get your supplies, probably already have a lot of them. And we paint together. Especially if you're a beginner. It's a great class, and if you're not a beginner, you're welcome to. You're welcome to come. It'll probably be a pretty simple project if you're not a beginner, but still fun. And if you're a little more advanced, something that you can always do is just create whatever comes to you. Maybe you want to make it different colors than what I use. Maybe you want to draw it a little bit different. I give you a traceable, but you don't have to use it. And I just think that's so fun to see people create their own thing. And it's so fun to see at the end what everyone has done. So now I'm just adding some darker green to these leaves and the grass. And the stems. So I'm planning on having a creative circle where people can come online and paint together. And I'm going to have a whole bunch of new stuff in there that I'm working on. Some doodling, some other like creative type, therapeutic type projects. And that is going to be a paid class workshop. It's going to be like a monthly that you can join and you can cancel anytime. And that is still in the works, so it's going to be low cost. So I'm hoping most people can afford it. And that's if you really want to get more experience painting. All right, so I think I'm going to leave these shrubs in the background. I'm going to leave them a little bit lighter and just add a little bit of dark around the bottom parts. I want the leaves to stand out. So I'm going to take this very dark green, go over the grassy areas. And there's really just a couple of them here. Okay. And I think the last thing is, I almost forgot, and that is these little flowers. These little flowers have greenery also. Again, just using the very tip. And I want this to be dark. I don't really want to have to go over it very much because it's so small. Okay. Again, adds a little bit of water, just water that down just a little bit. And I wanted to make this shrub and back a little bit darker. All right, and then again, almost finished with the painting part. Okay, this is turning out so colorful and beautiful. So now I'm going to just let this dry. And when it's super dry, I'm going to take my black fine tip pen and I'm going to outline it. And I just thought of something that I really wanted to, I'm going to rinse this brush really well. I wanted to mix a little bit darker blue, and I'm going to paint the inside of the window panes this. Yes. Almost forgot. And so this is just a little tiny bit of violet with the turquoise blue. And look at what a beautiful blue that makes. I think if you don't have a violet or a good purple in your paints, that is a good color to invest in, because I don't know about you, but I've tried mixing purples. Sometimes I get a really good color and a lot of times I don't. So I feel like it's just worth it to just get a purple that you really like. I really like this one. And I do have the name of it listed in the description. Again, it's the Daniel Smith paint. I think I need to add a little bit of greenery behind here. Just to kind of fill this area in a little bit. Rinsing my brush. There we go. Okay, so I waited a bit and my painting is dry now. And it's always good to make sure it's really dry before you move into this final step, because if it's even a little bit wet, sometimes the paints can run. So I'm using the 005 and the 05 fine tip micron permanent black ink pens. And I love this step. This is called watercolor sketching. And right now I could call this done for sure. I would not have to do this step, but I really like to do it because I feel like it adds a lot of, I don't know, detail work, but also it just kind of makes your whole work kind of pop, because the style, this whimsical style, is pretty flat. It doesn't have a lot of different shadows in it. And so it just helps bring out the colors even more by doing this step. So I just start with a sketching motion. And depending on how rough your watercolor paper is, you don't want it to have a really super heavy dark line, and it's pretty easy to make it thin, because, or not solid, I should say, because of the paper being rough. But it should look like you just kind of sat down and sketched this. That's why they call it watercolor sketching. And another thing that happens is once you get all this outlining done, The white parts look really white, especially in contrast with the color. So even though the paper itself is not pure white, watercolor paper is usually a very slight cream or beige color. But interesting enough, as you outline, the white looks even more white. Now, don't worry if you go a little bit outside the lines while you're doing this. If you really went way outside, you could always fill that in with some more paint when you're done, if you want. But I really wouldn't worry about it too much. It's supposed to look whimsical. It's supposed to look hand-drawn. And you don't really have to outline every single detail. Kind of just use your intuition. And most likely your lines are not going to be super straight. And that's totally fine too. Again, should look hand done. And our second round of trash trucks is on its way. I might hear it. We have recycle, and then we have trash. And I think what kind of takes a lot of the time really is this outlining part, because the painting is done. So again, you could either speed up this part of the video, you could skip ahead if you're good with your outlining and you don't need me to show you. And it's a little bit easier to do these lines if you just do the sketching motion instead of trying to draw a straight line. And you can kind of see how everything just sort of starts to take on life just by adding a little bit of detail like this. And the last thing is the sun, which I'm actually going to switch to the lighter pen for that. And I found I just like a little bit lighter line because the sun is such a light color of yellow. And that is just from experience, again, from doing these summary images. So now when I get to this point, I just kind of start to take a little step back and see, is there anything that looks out of balance? Is there anything that needs a little bit more? And another thing that I did on the traceable, these squiggly lines on the rooftop didn't come in very, very well. So I did add them. And I'm adding these little, kind of make it look like roof tiles. Okay, and the last thing, I'm just going to add a few little dots with my bigger pen. And I think it's just kind of make this look like pebbles or sand. And this can just be kind of random. Okay. Taking a step back, kind of looking around. And I am going to use the Sharpie pen just in one little area. And that is for the sun. Just put, and I've done this on each of these summary images, just a little like backwards C. And that one went over here. Okay. All right, this was really a fun project. I like the way it's turned out, and I always say to sign your work. I almost always sign mine in the lower right-hand corner. I just put my initials and the date, the year. And mostly just so I can keep progress of my own work, I like to have the date. And I think it's good just to be proud of when you finish something and put your signature on it, show that you finished it, that it's your work. And I think, I was kind of debating about the lines on the wood lines on the house and the door. And I think I'm just going to leave them in this one without any black outlining because I like the way that that looks a little bit lighter for the beach cottage. Okay, well, that is it. And I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to my channel. And for those of you who have already subscribed, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me to have that support. So have a great rest of your day, rest of your night, and I will see you in the next tutorial.